Good afternoon and welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. Today we have a special segment on symbolic expression for which we have our expert Ms. Manisha. She is going to translate the language in sign language. For discussion we are having basic concept in sociology. Now sociology is a diverse and pluralistic discipline. It means that it is kind of studying a wide range of issues related to the society. So we have a number of recurring key concepts, and sociologists have studied these concepts to make reality more understanding. So why is it important to study concepts? Because we have to have a meaning of that concept. There are different ways in which social reality can be explained, and therefore we need to know the meaning of these concepts and also how they have been used and applied in sociological research. So what becomes important is that every day we hear in a common sense interaction terms, concepts, which is kind of taken for granted in terms of a certain explanation. Sociologists give us a very specific understanding of these concepts. So we can say that concepts help in making us understand social reality, everyday life, interaction, how we look at, say, the institution of marriage, family, state, the market, everything is included in this sphere. So the sociological concepts are necessary for a clear discussion on social phenomena. So formulation of concepts leads to increased understanding of the reality. So to keep in mind that we will be dealing with a number of concepts, but this is not an end of it. The list is exhaustive. We are only going to discuss some of the concepts. So the first concept is culture. Culture, what is culture? We have all heard the term culture. In sociology, it refers to manners, images, speech, dress, custom, law, value system, everyday behavior. So this is a very abstract definition of culture. Everything under the earth is included in it. Now if we were to make a kind of a better understanding, we can say that it is our common sense assumptions, expectations, values and norms that help us to interact with one another. And in general, we can say there are two types of culture. First, non-material aspect of culture. As the term itself says, it's non-material. That means items which will not have a value, materialistic value. What are these? These are our belief system, our language communication, practices that are shared in common in a group. So we have heard this, that the culture of one society is different from the other. So we say Indian culture, American culture. What does that mean? It is the way in which the people of a common group interact with each other. The second type of culture is material culture. Now material culture are those part of the culture which has a use value. That is, there are certain ways in which you can add a monetary value to it. And what would this include? This would include the building, the infrastructural, technological gadgets, clothing. It's a wide list: film, music, literature, art. So most of the time, sociologists make an understanding of how non-material and material culture impact the relation between individual in a society. Now we'll look into some of the concepts which are related with culture. A very important concept is cultural capital. Now we know that capital means money, economy. How are we relating it to culture? Because culture is about beliefs and values. Piri Bourdieu, one of the important sociologists, has kind of coined the concept of cultural capital. Why? Well, what does it mean? It is the capital in the form of culture, So we know that we have a lot of cultural capital in the form of knowledge and taste. And this has been discussed in relation to class formation. So each class has a certain taste, and that taste would be differ from the other class. So, if we look into the market, we see the upper class has a taste of, say, a higher brand which are higher in monetary value. So, the taste would vary as per your class order. And how does it matter? Because that particular group has a certain asset in the form of culture. So, the use of material and non-material resources to maintain their power and privilege to transmit it to them, to their children. So, we know, for instance, the children of upper class go to a certain kind of school. They have access to certain kind of market. So, how are they being able to use it? Because it was their parents or grandparents who were able to transmit this idea of material, non-material culture to them. So, in a very important common example would be of education. So, we see in upper class, education is very important. So, it is for middle class. So, they need to send their children to good schools, well-ranking colleges, and many of them also send them abroad. So, this is the cultural capital. It's a kind of an investment that will go on building on the culture. Whereas, children from poor family or lower class are unable to many a time go to school because they don't have that cultural capital. They do not realize many a time the importance of education. And many a time, because of the economic necessity to have every member earn in the family, many children drop out from school or unable to go to school. What does it result in? It results in a vicious circle of poverty. So, the parents were not able to go to school, they were able to improve their capital, so it gets transmitted to their children. Bourdieu, that is P.D. Bourdieu, saw cultural capital as important in the transmission of power and privilege between generations. What does that mean? That is, if a particular family has an amount of power, and that could emerge from the economic, from the market, from the politics, from state, they use to transfer that to their children. And this is very common in the political realm in India. We've seen that children of many of the big politicians then becomes enter politics. So, this is the way in which cultural capital is transmitted from one generation to the other. The other concept is cultural relativism. Now, what does cultural relativism mean? It is kind of an approach or method to study society, where different society or culture are analyzed objectively without using the value of one culture to judge the worth of the other. So, in the beginning, if we see, most of the time society in India was studied from the Western perspective. India was objectified as an area of study. That was problematic. So, we now have unique cultural practices. Every society is different from the other. So, that uniqueness is captured through cultural relativism. So, every function and meaning of institutions, trait in a particular society is studied with reference to that specific society. So, that will lead into kind of a emergence of multiple perspective of understanding culture. So, the central point of cultural relativism is that particular cultural setting traits are right because they work well in that setting, while other traits are wrong because they would clash painfully with parts of that culture. Many a time when we try to understand India as a society, we tend to compare it with the Western society, and therefore there becomes a hierarchy that this is good and this is bad, which in itself methodologically is incorrect. If we are to understand the society in itself, we need to study that society in the particular context. The third concept related to culture is the concept of cultural lag. This concept was given by Ogburn, and here he is trying to basically understand how the material culture and the non-material culture are not evolving or progressing in the same speed. So the rate of invention within the society is the function of the size of existing cultural base. How much of inventions, new discovery a society will undergo will depend on the existing cultural value. So Ogburn believed that material and non-material culture change in different way. There's a different speed in which they are progressing. So obviously, because it's a market-oriented society, it's more in terms of capitalism, the material structure or culture of the society is moving at a higher speed. It's kind of a directional and progressive character. We can see all around. If we look in around, the building structures have evolved. They have changed a large from the last decade. So technology has evolved. If we look at the example of mobile phone, we've seen from the size of the mobile to the type of or the services being provided has expanded. But does the non-material culture expand at the same rate? The answer is no. And that gap between the non-material culture and the material culture is the cultural lag. So it is defined as the time between appearance of a new material invention and the making of appropriate adjustment in corresponding area of non-material culture. So we need a kind of a time span to adjust to the advance in material culture, and many a time there are other cultural values that prevent us from accepting or adopting the material change, and therefore cultural lag becomes important. Now the second concept, which is very significant in the understanding of society, behavior, individual, is the concept of status and role. Now status is a very again common sense word used in our everyday life. From sociological perspective, it refers to the position of an individual occupies in a group or in a society. That is, your status will vary according to your standing in your occupational group. It could be also in the private sphere, but more or less it is with reference to the productive sphere. Each status has defined rights and duties assigned to it. So if you are a bureaucrat, you have a set of duties and responsibility. If you are a doctor, you have a set of duties. In the private sphere or the domestic sphere, the status of the father, say in a patriarchal society, would be as a guardian, as a protector, and the mother would be kind of taking care or the providing care to the society. So each individual could have multiple status at one point of time. So an individual could be a bureaucrat, it could be a father, could be a brother, but each of this will have an assigned role and responsibility. There are two types of status. One is achieved status. Achieved status, as the term says, is something that you acquire through your merit and effort. So it is based on the individual choice. Say for instance, one was born into a lower class, has worked hard and able to become a doctor or an engineer. So he has moved up the ladder. The status has improved in society, and that is his achieved status. The second type of the status is ascribed status. Now what is ascribed status? It is something which is assigned to individual either at the time of birth or inheritance, in terms of parent status, biologically transmission. So a person does not choose the status, it's given, and it's a group phenomena. So the caste, being born as a Brahmin, is an ascribed status, or the fact of being born into a royal family is an ascribed status. Role is that every status has its own assigned role. That is the responsibility attached to every status. The next concept is group. Now group is basically again a very common word, but we refer in sociology with reference to social group. Group could be any collection of individual, but when we add the pretext social, it refers to a collection of continuously interacting person who share common interest, culture, value and norms within a given society. So it could be people who are known to each other. They have a common interest on which the interaction is based. So we can have a religious group, we could have a cultural group, or we could have a communal group. So which is something which is common in the same group. We identify with that group and the group can create a sense of belongingness. So India could be a kind of all Indians are part of that group. So we feel that we belong to India as a nation. However, the types of groups that exist may differ from society to society. So, but we need to keep in mind that group is different from aggregate. Aggregate is simply a collection. Say, on a railway station, we see a number of people together. They have a common interest that they have to catch a train, but it's not a group. Why is it not a group? Because it does not have a sense of belonging. It's temporary getting together. Whereas a group is a permanent kind of a thing and the interaction among members is regular. Now, if you look into the social group, there are n number of types. So, we have the primary group and the secondary group. The primary group is basically the group with which we are more interactive. Say the family is a primary group. The secondary group could be, say, in a college we form a group for some cultural performance. So that's a secondary group. Then we have voluntary and involuntary group. Voluntary means the membership is you don't have a choice in it and your membership is permanent. Involuntary, you join the group on your choice and you have the option of leaving the group. Similarly, we have in-group and out-group. In-group is something similar to the primary group, the group that you belong to. Out-group is something that you were part of it for a while. Then we have Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. Now, Gemeinschaft implies community and Gesellschaft implies association. This was used in terms of understanding the evolution of society from a simple society to a complex society, where the argument was that as society is moving towards industrialization and modernity, community life is declining and association or informal groups are increasing. The fifth type is reference group. Now, the reference group is basically a group that we use as a model. We refer to that group. We want to learn certain values and norms from that group. Then we have horizontal and vertical group, small and large group, organized and unorganized group. The next concept, which is again very common for important for sociology, is society. Now, sociology is the study of society. What does society mean? The word society comes from the Latin word socius, S-O-C-I-U-S, which means friendship or common companionship. A society is a large group of people. There are numerous smaller groups in a society. So a society is kind of an abstract, and it's a relative concept. At times it excludes certain members, at times it includes all of them. So that is why several groups are within the society. Relationship in society are long lasting and enduring. So membership in a society is permanent. You cannot involuntarily leave a society. All individuals and groups in a society consider themselves to be members of it. So therefore, we can say it's a long-term social group. Long-term, permanent, and the membership is larger. Related to society is the concept of community. Community is a collectivity where the members share a common territorial area as the base of operation for daily activities. So we have used the terms for, say, the tribal community or the Dalit community. So they are particularly related to a geographical area. Three other elements may also be present in any uses. Communities may be thought of as a collection of people with a particular social structure. Social structure in the sense means a network of relation. So you have to have a particular social structure to which you belong to be a part of a community. Second, a sense of belonging or community spirit. So you know that you are a member of this particular community and its norms and values are to be learned and handed down to the next generation. So you need to maintain the identity of the community. Third, all the daily activities of a community, work and non-work, takes place within the geographical area. Now let us look at some of the characteristics of a community. The first is territory, the second close and informal relations, mutuality, common values and beliefs, organized interaction, strong group feeling, cultural similarity. These are the characteristics. Now we've learned two concepts, society and community. We need to understand that they are not the same, they are different. So though it is though both refers to group in which there is interaction, in which there is a we feeling, but yet the two are different. So community are based on human relationship. What are the differences? Number one, society is a web of building social relation, whereas community is only a group of individuals. Number two, society does not have a geographical area, but community has a specific geographical area. Now we come to the next concept, that is institution. An institution is a set of rules, regulation, folkways, mores that are gradually developed and followed by society. So every society will have multiple institutions. Now the community is an informal group, institution is a formal group. Example of institutions are the educational institution, religion as an institution, politics as an institution. So what are the main characteristics of institutions? Number one, institutions are formed as a result of people collective activities. They are primarily social creatures. Number three, institutions can be found in all societies and have existed at all stages of development. The institutions kind of change with time, with progress, with development. So we have the institution of family, and we see how the structure of the family is changing and the membership of family residing together is changing. So institutions are regarded as enforcing rule. So from a feminist perspective, people say the family is the first institutions where the norms of patriarchy are taught. So we see the gendered norms, the hierarchy is enforced in the family. The next concept is social organization. It refers to interdependence of different aspects of society and is an essential characteristic of all social entities. Herbert Spencer used the term organization to refer to the interrelation of economic, political and other division of society. So organization means you have a structure which has based of rules and regulations, it has a formal social relation and it is kind of abiding by certain rule. So with this we see we have done a number of concepts which helps us to understand society more from a holistic perspective. There are a number of more concepts which can be done in the forthcoming lecture. With this, I come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you.